Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. This week's program, a conversation with Dr. Glenn Tonsor, ag economist at K-State. We're going to talk about this cattle market, what's going on in the feedlots, as well as some of those boxed beef prices, and kind of try to make some sense of everything that's going on. We'll also have features from the Kansas Soybean Commission, Kansas Department of Agriculture, and Kansas Grain Sorghum, as well as our weekly updates of the Kansas Livestock Association, market information from Pinyon, a division of Keiko icep.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com.
And agricultural news from agview.net. A new planting intention survey from Allendale shows market prices influencing planting decisions. The analytical research and brokerage firm released its planting estimates earlier this week, and following a nationwide survey that spanned 29 states. The survey estimates corn planting intentions, 92.8 million acres, 2 million more than last year. Now, this will be the fourth largest all time, and 4.5 million acres, though, off the 2012 peak of 97.2 million. Allendale production estimate would imply an increase of over 1 billion bushels over last year. That would be a production record if achieved. Now, soybean planting intentions seen at 90.3 million acres, 7.2 million more than a year ago, be a record acreage, 155,000 over the 2017 peak of 90.16 million bushels. Now, the 4.5 billion bushel projection estimate will also be a record, 422 million over last year. Wheat acreage estimated 46.4 million acres. That's 2.1 million more than a year ago. Now, assuming normal abandonment and trend yields, Allendale production estimate of 1.9 billion is 84 million bushels over last year. Well, in the annual American Society of Animal Science Midwest meeting was hosted virtually earlier this month, and Dr. Anthony J. Tarpoff, A.J. Tarpoff, K-State's Animal Science and Industry Assistant Professor and Extension Specialist, was awarded the Outstanding Young Extension Specialist Award. Tarpoff received his bachelor's degree in animal science at K-State in 2010, following his DVM and master's degree in biomedical science, also from the College of Veterinary Medicine. Following his graduation in 2012, he practiced feedlot production medicine up in Alberta, Canada, and in 2016, he returned to K-State as the Beef Extension veterinarian with a 70% extension, 20% research, and 10% teaching appointment. He works closely with the state extension team to develop an extension program that will help improve the health of cow-calf, stocker, and feedlot producers throughout the state. And for years, Kansas has outpaced other states as a top producer of grain sorghum, and growers have a resource to keep it that way. K-State's 2020 Kansas Performance Test with the Grain Sorghum Hybrid publication now available online from the K-State Agronomy website. It features summary of last year's growing conditions, disease and insect considerations, as well as performance by hybrids in major production areas of the state. You can compare hybrid yields with the previous 2 years and see a 3-year average for each. Other agronomic data provided include test weights, days of bloom time, and percent of crop lodged. That lodging occurs when the plant falls over because of wet soil, high wind, or weakness due to stalk rot. Each table also provides details of the management of the testing location, including planting and harvest dates, fertilizer rates, tillage practices, and that 2020 precipitation pattern comparing to a long-term average. Find more ag news online at agview.net. Stay with us, more in a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com. And agview.net, serving the Beef Belt and Western Corn Belt with reliable and relevant agriculture information. agview.net.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
And joining us is Dr. Glenn Tonsor, ag economist at K-State. Dr. Tonsor, always great to have you on.
Happy to be here, Ken.
Okay, we're going to talk about a subject that I think everybody's trying to find answers to, and I think you're the guy at least to get that started. We're now seemingly in this stuck mode of cash cattle prices at 114 or $1.14 a pound, whatever. And but we see the box beef prices still way higher than maybe in correlation what it should be. So I guess the first question is, why is that?
Yeah, I like to start the discussion by giving some context on the numbers. So in the ones you gave were a snapshot. I think that's helpful, but I want to share a couple more points in time snapshots for comparison. So, we're sitting here in the middle of March, and exactly like you said, live cattle is about 114, choice box beefs around 224. That's varying a little bit more day to day, but just for context for our discussion, we started the year at 210 on choice box beef and about 112 on fed cattle. So if we just back up to how we started 2021, that situation actually is more favorable for producers than those selling box beef, comparatively speaking. Let's go all the way back to May, which is kind of the high water mark when choice beef got really expensive. So middle of, or early May of 2020, the bottleneck was at its peak, so to speak. 460 was the number on choice box beef. That was the really high number in the news. And we had 102 fed cattle prices. So that spread was kind of at its widest then. That's why I remind us of that point in time. A year ago today, so the middle of March in 2020, we were talking 224 choice beef, 106 fed cattle. So why am I giving us those different time snaps? Folks can listen to that. Is we're not a lot different than we were a year ago, right before the pandemic hit, before the bottleneck and so forth. What is similar today versus then is similar to what was the case in, say, 2019 even, was we have a lot of cattle going through the system. So the capacity to process cattle is fairly full. That's a way to think about that, right? There's a lot of cattle in the feed yards. Yes, there's seasonal variation, but we have a large supply trying to go through a fairly occupied amount of packing and processing capacity. That was the case before COVID hit. And then COVID hit, right? April and May 2020 was the worst of this. But to this day, we still have aftermath of we're doing things differently in the plants, right? So throughput isn't exactly the same at the same rates, certainly not the same cost, because we have different PPE and management of labor and so forth. That cost, economist says, increases a wedge. So it increases a wedge between fed cattle and wholesale beef prices. We've seen some of that, but quite honestly, we haven't seen as much as some might expect at this point, nearly 1 year into the pandemic. That wedge was really wide in April and May of 2020. That's why it was all over the news. But the economic concepts we're talking about are very similar today. Just that pressure has narrowed because the industry's figured out how to sustain larger processing volumes.
We're talking with Dr. Glenn Tonsor, a K-State ag economist, on this cattle market. We're going to take a break and continue this conversation and maybe talk about demand, talk about some other things moving forward. So we'll be back in just a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
And our guest is Dr. Glenn Tonsor, K-State ag economist and really a livestock specialist as he travels all over the state as well as the country. Well, at least we'll get back to traveling, doing a lot of presentations. But we're talking about the cattle market and really the box beef prices and where they are in correlation to cash cattle. And so, Dr. Tonsor, as we as we look, we have a lot of conversations with producers going, we still don't see why even at 225, 230 for these boxed beef prices, they seem to be, a little higher because we don't see the demand. But are there some numbers we're not seeing? Because it seems like restaurants, food service, schools, others haven't been using the amount that we did, say, pre-pandemic.
There's certainly several things we quote unquote don't see. And what I mean by that is, like analysts, we don't have all the numbers in front of us, or we have some indirect indicators. One of them, first and foremost, is the cost of running a packing and processing facility. So we're left sort of guessing what those cost structures are. I know with certainty today those costs are higher because of COVID, but exactly how much higher, that's open for debate. Probably varies by plant and plant size and so forth. You asked me about the demand side, like where the beef is going and what the beef demand situation is. I've been pleasantly surprised. I've done lots of these sessions in the last year. The retail side beef demand has been amazing to me. Consumers' willingness to buy, and ground beef's been a lot of that because the public's comfortable and used to using ground beef. But I also interject in this is I remain concerned on the restaurant side. So yes, certain states are opening up. Texas is quote unquote open for business, and those kind of things probably will be good for food service demand. But exactly how fast states open up, and more importantly, how comfortable public in those states are going back to dine-in eating, and with that, higher demand for sit-down meals, things like ribeye steaks, is a big uncertainty here in 2021. I think there's a lot of reasons for optimism. We have a lot of cash. Household savings is way up. Household incomes actually went up in aggregate despite a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. That's because we borrowed from the future. The government large stimulus is a big part of that. I suspect that will boost beef demand in aggregate, but the public's got to be comfortable going out and about, and that's going to vary a lot by age cohorts and their health situation and so forth. So we're going to be navigating that throughout 2021. The other one I have to throw in real quick, Ken, is the international trade front. So, the beef industry is way more dependent, and I would argue that's a good thing, to boost cattle prices on international exports than it used to be. But it's not just a U.S. are we rolling out the vaccine, or people getting comfortable going back to normal economic activity. That's really a global discussion. So the Asian markets, the Canadian markets, the Mexican markets, all major markets for U.S. beef, exactly how comfortable they are going back to normal foot traffic and being another pull on U.S. beef demand is really important for us to monitor.
Before we let you go, we're just going to do a little crystal ball quickly. Where will it be this summer? Will we, if this demand continues, will we see higher feedlot prices, or are there still too many unknown factors?
I anticipate we will. So I'm bullish net the demand story, which is supportive pulling up cattle prices. I'm also bullish that we know how to run facilities even if COVID lingers with us a little bit longer. That's not to say we won't have challenges, but we've learned a lot. So the bottleneck type disruptions, I'm optimistic won't be nearly the same going forward. And with that, we have some supply side supportive prices that's coming. So we're going to have fewer cattle going through the system going forward. If you add all that up, where I'm looking at today, once a month, I actually put out projected returns on Ag Manager for the feedlot sector. We're looking at positive net margins being projected. My last numbers came out about a week ago through September. So cattle coming out of feed yards through September will have a net positive margin. Obviously, everybody wants a larger net positive, right, but the mere fact those are positive margins that are being projected is consistent with that answer I just gave you.
All right, Dr. Tonsor, as always, thanks for the update. Good to talk to you, and we'll talk to you again.
Thanks for having me on, Ken.
Dr. Glenn Tonsor, K-State Ag Economist, has joined us. Stay with us. We'll have more in just a moment.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
The American Soybean Association completed its annual resolutions process February 25th. The resolutions provide direction on different policy issues that ASA may support or oppose this legislative session. The process of approving resolutions annually builds upon the existing document to make timely changes and consider emerging priorities. The resolutions process begins with revisions from state delegates and the ASA advocacy teams. Those adjustments are then merged together by a subcommittee and presented to the voting delegates for final approval. Conducting a multiple-stage process from the states up to finalize the language on the resolutions brings extra value to each soybean farmer's voice and opinion. This year, environmental stewardship was a major consideration in updating the resolutions since sustainability and conservation will take center stage in policy discussions this year. Investing in rural infrastructure and creating a strong farm safety net were also major considerations. More on the 2021 American Soybean Association resolutions can be found at soygrowers.org. For Kansas's resolutions and legislative priorities, be sure to check out kansassoybeans.org/policy.
What if sustainability were synonymous with U.S. soy? If energy efficiency, water quality, and soil health help define U.S. soy's value, that future is here, the time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is committing to sustainability that's achievable, worthwhile, and enduring. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
All of us here at the Kansas Department of Agriculture are excited to recognize the month of March as Kansas Agriculture Month, and Tuesday, March 23rd, as Kansas Agriculture Day. Join us throughout the month as we celebrate the contributions of the ag community, and as we help raise awareness that the crops and animals grown on farms and ranches in Kansas are feeding Kansas families, as well as families around the nation and the world. The critical role of Kansas agriculture has never been more significant than over the past year, as the essential work that farmers and ranchers do to keep the food supply chain moving was made even more apparent. Ag remains Kansas's largest industry and economic driver, with 71 agriculture, food, and food processing sectors combining for $49.2 billion in the Kansas economy. As we learned in the 2017 Census of Agriculture, Kansas ranks 5th in the nation for the total value of agriculture production. And that ag production is quite diverse, with grain sorghum, wheat, beef cattle, hay, sunflower, corn, hog, and soybean production all ranked in the top 10 in the nation. The Kansas agricultural sector also includes food processing, research and education, renewable energy production, agribusiness, technology, and many value-added enterprises. This year, in response to the demand for enhanced local food production, nearly $12 million in CARES Act funds were earmarked for expanding capacity of the state's food supply system. And these grants have already made a significant impact across the state, as local Kansas food and agriculture businesses have expanded their capacity in simple and concrete ways. Find out more about Kansas Agriculture Month on our website, agriculture.ks.gov/KSAgMonth. Or follow along on social media as KDA celebrates the Kansas ag industry this March.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and Liberty Link that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
As farmers are making planting decisions this spring, the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission caught up with its at-large commissioner for Coldwater, Clark Bibb.
We farm 21 miles south of Coldwater and 17 north of Coldwater, so we're spread out quite a ways. This year we're going to plant about 3,200 acres of milo. It's a little more than last year. I suppose 20% more than last year, primarily because we're going to plant some irrigated milo that in the past it hadn't been economical. Corn usually beats it, but this year it looks like it's going to be pretty profitable. Prices have just, the basis is so good and it's cheaper to grow than corn and more reliable than, say, soybeans. This area is fairly dry in the summer, and milo seems to hang in there better than about anything.
On top of his farm management obligations, Clark also serves as a grain sorghum commissioner, directing checkoff dollars in the state and developing new markets at home and abroad.
Been totally impressed with the commission. We got to meet all kinds of trade delegates and some agriculture ministers, and the Japanese are really interested in mainly food grade milo, but in grain sorghum in general. And I know a young farmer here that's going to plant his first crop, and he's really excited about it because, I mean, you know, it pencils out good for him and could be an outstanding year in grain sorghum.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
The prescribed burning season is underway, with ranchers and landowners using the practice to improve grazing distribution and decrease undesirable vegetation. In order to balance the use of prescribed fire in the Flint Hills with the need for clean air in downwind communities, those planning to burn should consider the Kansas Flint Hill Smoke Management Plan. Through its voluntary approach, the plan leaves flexibility in the hands of the land manager, but puts the responsibility on him or her to decide when it would be best to burn. Resources available online at ksfire.org will help ranchers prevent problematic smoke events in highly populated areas by giving them access to information and online tools. A key element of this website is the forecast map and the smoke modeling tool. The map shows the potential smoke impact of burning in a specific area on the urban air quality, and it's updated daily. The modeling tool allows someone to see where the smoke will go from a fire in a specific location. The forecast map and modeling tools are available for mobile devices. The website also contains links to training, regulations, policies, and publications pertaining to smoke management.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Good morning, guys. Colette here with Pinyon, a division of Keiko icep. While many look to get a start on planting this month, the reports seem to be the market movers, and many folks have been anticipating the month of March with Tuesday's supply and demand report and from the USDA and the planting intentions report later this month. However, this Tuesday's report didn't offer many changes to previous numbers, other than to increase world stockpiles of corn and beans. Markets were down shortly after, but closed up following the report after making fresh highs in the beans on Monday. Farmers and traders will be patiently waiting till month end to see what kind of numbers they get from the USDA then. In the meantime, it will be important to get your own numbers together. We are at levels we haven't seen in over 5 years. There are lots of things at play in the markets right now, whether here at home and in South America, Chinese dealing with ASF again, as well as COVID restrictions being lifted. We're getting back to some sort of normal, and there will only be more to keep us busy. Don't miss out on these levels. If you have questions about what you can be doing to take advantage of these levels or what a plan looks like for you, give us a call at 888-452-8751. I'm Colette at Pinyon, and we are excited about the marketing year ahead and helping you navigate it.
That's our show this week. Be social with us online at kansasagreport.net or on our social media channels, even our YouTube page. For another Kansas Ag Report, I'm Ken Rogers.